What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamer Dad channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. How can the developers of the Division 3 make it a given success? In today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to look at kind of an open book test, right? If you're asking a question by the third possible entry of the division and what will make it good, you're asking a question that has already established answers. However, we're just going to do a review because this is not something that we have to go scratching our heads going, I wonder what's going to make the Division 3 a success. However, it can also get to the point where the creative side of the developers can really take, flight, and sometimes they may fly over some of the really obvious things that are sitting there on the runway. Not saying that it's a bad thing in terms of their creative enterprise wanting to try new things. However, what is the point of trying new things if your community that you're making the game for are not necessarily down with it, right? So let me go ahead and kind of break down what I'm trying to say. If you think about the Division 1 and the Division 2, what you're going to notice is the Division 1's PvE is actually pretty solid. You can take the PvE in the Division and the Division 2 and you can pretty much layer it in the sense that the player will play the regular game, they'll run through the story mission, and then every main mission is open for interpretation, challenges, and all of that stuff. So you can play a mission on easy, you can play it on heroic, you can play it on whatever difficulty you want, you can play it with different kinds of directives attached to it. All of these little things kind of continue to make the gameplay a little enhanced, give it a little bit of depth. And this was, in my opinion, what I thought made the PvE very cool in the Division game. Provided for a lot of gameplay, and the loot cycle, or I guess the loot aspect of it is also tied into this particular area of things. Now, when you look at the PvP, the Division 1 PvP had that kind of layering on it compared, and a better layering in my opinion compared to the Division 2. And I'm not even a PvP player, I'm just looking at it from the logistics side. And what I mean by this is, if you actually evaluate and say, okay, what was the multi-layering that they actually implemented in terms of the PvP for the Division 1 that we didn't see in the Division 2, the answer is a very simple answer. It's an open book test, and that is, ladies and gentlemen, repeat it after me, survival mode. Survival mode had a PvP and PvE mode where the player faced the challenge of the world, or if they wanted, they faced the challenge of the world as it was. Basically, they did a kind of a change of the world state, and then you faced other players as well. This multi-use was heavily missing in the Division 2 at launch. And I think for the developers to basically make a given success, they need to drop a mode like survival on day one. I mentioned this in my last video, but I wanted to discuss it in a much more fleshed out way in a separate video because the equation is quite simple. Survival mode was something that a lot of people really did enjoy in the Division 1. There's no doubt about that. The moment it came out, in fact, people were asking for more when it came to survival. Do you remember? Do some of you remember? Some of you might remember that people were asking for the developers to randomize the loot, randomize the world, randomize where the resources were, so that players could have a challenge every time that they got in. Now, yes, there was a huge random value in terms of a variable, which is basically you could land in one of a few designated spots. However, by the time you'd played the mode over and over again, you kind of already knew where things were, and your challenge diminished significantly after running survival a number of times. In fact, some people were able to run survival in, I think, how many minutes? I think what was the fastest record back then was something around a little over 10 minutes. Some people could just basically speed run the mode. But in randomizing that mode, they would have probably, if they had done that, they would have been able to basically go ahead and change up the game. But a little too late for all of that now. What are we looking for in the future, and what does the future basically spell? And the developers have a really interesting roadmap to be able to do something like that, because that invites everybody into the ecosystem. That invites everybody into a game mode, and that provides the game mode with some longevity down the line. If you can just randomize those parameters, you now leave this particular sandbox for some kind of a regenerating world, and players can just continue to play and loop over it over and over and over again. And what's beautiful, it's a separate game mode that can be balanced on its own timeline in its own entirety. What I fear, though, is a lot of the minds and a lot of the creative direction that worked on the Division 1, we're not necessarily certain if they're still going to be in the pipeline in creating the next Division 3 game. And that's where I think, you know, this might be a challenge. However, the developers have access to videos, access to discussions, access to, you know, metrics and data. And possibly this could be something that, you know, maybe they can get, you know, they can gain and get their hands on. Another big challenge that we have to also go ahead and, you know, highlight is the fact that, you know, by the time Survival came out, even though there was a huge portion of the community who enjoyed and liked it, it came out as a DLC, an expansion of some kind. Now, maybe the data did not even support the fact that a lot of people were playing it at the time, but it was already kind of a little too late for the Division 1 at that moment in time. What they had was they had solidified their core player base. Everyone who, you know, at the time was playing the Division, for the most part, you know, was already a fan, was already, you know, in a sense, they had already been won. They didn't need anybody to convince them. They already knew exactly what it is that they were going to, you know, be engaging in. That was always kind of like the main thing. Now, when you move past that, you know, you could say possibly the data may not necessarily support that massive go ahead and make themselves a survival mode, you know, day one. But again, you have to put those circumstances in play in order for you to be able to get a very good picture. And what I think a broader picture can show you in evaluating if or if not, you know, a survival mode will probably have the same effect. But it doesn't really matter. A survival mode is such a cool game mode that its effect is more than likely going to have, you know, the same impact on the game regardless. I don't think even if you're bringing in a brand new player today and you put them in a situation where they have to, you know, basically fight against the world and fight against obstacles, there's no way they're not going to be intrigued by that. I mean, you can't tell me that that game mode and that idea is not a solid idea. So I think the multi-use of the Dark Zone day one, in terms of adding these game modes, and this is beyond conflict, those should be there, you know, day one. I think that's what the developers probably need to prioritize. Any expansion that they probably want to do need to be a world expansion with lore expansion like they did with Warlords of New York. I think, in my opinion, that was actually quite solid with incursions and raids and all those things added to it. However, the core basis, you know, needs to basically reflect this. And I'm sure that they will basically have a win situation on their hands without any problems. Oh, and, you know, if they can eliminate the bugs, that would also be nice as well. So this is my video. I want to go ahead and just share my thoughts with you guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. What do you think? Do you think the developers need to be targeting putting something like this in the game day one? I think so. And I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. Appreciate you guys' time and audience. Peace out.